Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Plugin Boutique Neoverb live stream. My name is Rob Jones, and I'm going to be your host for the next 45 minutes-ish. For any of you who don't know me, I'm the course director at producetech.com, where I've done lots of courses on plugins, for instance, plugins by iZotope. And I'm actually working on two new ones right now, Stutter Edit 2, which is loads of fun, and also Neoverb, which is the subject of today's live stream. But I'm not alone today. I'm going to be joined by Udayan Sinha. Let's bring in Udayan. Oh,
hello, Rob.
He's slightly off screen. Let's go with this one instead. One sec, guys. Forgot to do that. Bit of tech. You guys are used to this, right? I totally forgot to make him share my screen with live. Let's just get that on there. 1 second. When we're there. Hello, Udayan. So sorry about that.
Perfect. No problem.
Like I
Good
said,
to be here, Rob.
Nice one. So where and when are you, Udayan?
I am currently in Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA, right near iZotope headquarters. That's our home base. And like so many people, we are a remote workforce now. So I'm at home,
Yeah,
at doing the music production things.
of course. No, know the feeling. I never leave. So what is your official title at iZotope?
I'm product manager within the mix and master category. So any tools that revolve around that. Previously, I worked on Ozone 9, so that was my product, and now Neoverb is the next one in that lineage. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, so Neoverb's basically been your baby, right? So you're pretty intimate
Pretty
with the
much,
plugin.
yeah, pretty much for all of 2020. This has been it.
Awesome. So you're the perfect person to join us for today. We're going to be running through the plugin, checking out some audio examples, just listening to what it can do. Obviously, Udayan's going to be answering our questions, any questions you guys have. We're going to break it up a little bit, so not have continual chat, but we'll break it up into sections where we'll then turn to you guys for questions. And also, there's going to be a competition at the end where you can win one of 2 copies of Neoverb. So stay tuned for that. First, though, before we get into the plugin, I thought we'd get to know Udayan a bit with a few questions. So we won't go too personal here. They're all music and audio related. Question 1. Tell us 5 of the most influential tracks that you were into when growing up.
Probably the hardest question I've ever received.
I figured.
And so I'm going to say my 5 are The Smiths, This Charming Man. I'd say I wouldn't even be in music if it wasn't for The Smiths and Johnny Marr. So my second track is Atmosphere by Joy Division. That was the first track that actually made me think about production and engineering. Martin Hannett's production work on that and all of the Joy Division stuff was really, really influential. My third one was from the first Block Party record that came out in the early 2000s, a song called Banquet, which that Paul Epworth production, Rich Costi mixing, really, really exciting. And I listened to it recently. I cannot believe how fresh it still sounds. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up an American band. So I'm going to go with The Strokes.
Awesome.
The track Someday is one of my favorite guitar rock tracks of all time.
Nice.
And one nod to George Martin and the Beatles. I think A Day in the Life is still a masterpiece, and I love listening to that to kind of reconnect with why I'm in production and engineering in the first place. So that would be my 5th track.
That's some amazing choices. Yeah, I think I'd probably have to get some Beatles in there as well if I had to pick 5. I mean, it's got to be done, isn't it?
It's got to be done.
Yeah. So obviously you're an avid music fan. Do you play any instruments? Do you make music yourself?
Yeah. I actually started playing in a lot of indie rock, kind of new wave post-punk bands in the San Francisco Bay Area as a guitar player, songwriter. And eventually, at some point when we went in studio, I realized that I really was interested in producing and engineering the material we were working on. So really doing that for myself. And that's kind of what led me into this world of iZotope and music production tools. But yeah, started as a guitarist, songwriter, and then transitioned more to the engineering realm.
Cool. Well, that's sort of kind of answered the next question, which was going to be, did you train or did you study music? But I guess you did it more practically, right?
Definitely more practically. It was almost out of necessity, because I had a few instances, maybe a few viewers have had the same thing, where you go in studio and your vision for the song is not quite met. You've recorded, you've done the tracking. It just didn't get quite to what you had envisioned. And I realized that maybe the only way it will is if I actually take the reins and control, the mixing and seeing that creative control all the way through. So that's where it came from, was almost out of necessity to make sure I was able to achieve what I wanted to achieve. And then it just turned into a career, basically.
Nice. And what were the steps then that led from you just being a fan of sort of music and making music into joining iZotope?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think looking back, the moment that was really important to me was as I was exploring music production, and it's such a vast kind of world, the idea of working on tools for musicians that were kind of like the evolution of music production, that aspect of it seemed really exciting to me. So then I started thinking about, well, what companies are really embodying that and doing that kind of work, and iZotope was a company that kind of floated to the top there. So I just looked on their website, if they had any openings, if they were looking for anyone, and I actually started as a product marketing specialist, and then transitioned over to product management and owning Ozone and now Neoverb. But that's how it started, was simply just interviewing with a company that I thought was doing really cool work.
And when was that?
So this must have been early 2018. Around April 2018 is when I started. Yeah.
So iZotope had actually been going for a little while before then, right? What was the date? When did iZotope start? It was a good.
Yeah, it's almost a 20-year-old company, but 2001
Wow.
was the original. Yep, the original founding
With Ozone, right?
Yep. Vinyl and Ozone were kind of the first two, vinyl being the very first iZotope product, and then Ozone being the first, I'd say, major mastering tool that we worked on. And it's amazing to see that Ozone is still very much in play and part of the dialogue when it comes to mastering records.
Yeah, it's a standard. So we'll get to Ozone in a minute, because it kind of is involved a little bit with the Reverb dialogue. Last question is sort of about the company and you, and so the iZotope headquarters are in Boston, right? Is there a cool studio there?
There is. We have a few different rooms. We definitely have a mastering room, and we also have a tracking, kind of more traditional control room situation as well. So we try to have studios that encompass the entire kind of creative journey, and that is very useful to have when we're making plugins.
Yeah, nice. So I guess at this stage, we'll probably start moving on to specifics about plugins and Reverb and Neoverb, but we could turn to the viewers at this point and just to see if they have any specific questions about iZotope, or for you specifically. I'm not going to wait too long though, so get your questions in now if you have anything specific to ask. So we've got one come in, JC. This is from Peter DeLeg. I realize the AI differentiation, but apart from that, does Neoverb use the same reverb that I have in R4? I'm wondering if there's a difference sound-wise.
Great question. Yeah. So it's actually R2. that we're using under the hood. So as you know, some viewers may know, with the acquisition of Exponential Audio by iZotope, we had access to all this reverb technology, amazing reverb technology, and the expertise of Michael Carnes. R2 is really what's powering Neoverb, and we have different configurations of it because our Neoverb is actually a amalgamation of different reverb architectures, but we are borrowing from R2. And to answer the second part of that question, Michael Carnes was an advisor during the development of Neoverb. So we actually were able to look for areas where we can make sound quality improvements to the reverb algorithms themselves. So there have been improvements to the exponential architecture coming into Neoverb as well. So we were able to leverage his expertise, and he was very influential in helping us get Neoverb up to kind of iZotope standards.
Yeah, so just to backtrack a bit, because I said we were going to mention the Ozone involvement with this dialogue, and it's there was actually a reverb in Ozone, for anyone who doesn't know, and it is a bit of a talking point among producers that reverb kind of suddenly disappeared on one of the updates, even leading to some confusion with people I've spoken to about whether they should be using reverb on the master chain, in that its disappearance was seen as a bit of a statement, possibly. So yeah, what was the reason again for bringing it out of Ozone? It wasn't anything to do with that, was it?
Great question, and yeah, we get that question quite a bit. It definitely wasn't meant to be a nudge in any kind of production direction, using reverb on a stereo mix or using some form of ambience. I think totally acceptable processing. The truth of the matter is there was a significant redesign from Ozone 5 to Ozone 6. And given the kind of time budget we had to actually make that transition, we were basically building a new product. And the reverb we felt just was slightly below the line in terms of what we could deliver in the time frame that we had. And so that was really the reason, is it was timing and trying to fit in other features in this kind of big redesign. But it wasn't meant to be any sort of statement about artistic intent or direction for mastering. It was literally just cut due to time from the iZotope side.
Yeah. And just I have to sneak this in there, even though it's not sort of Neoverb, but it was just something else. Mark Hool mentioned, a producer here in Berlin that I was speaking to last week, and it was just an idea actually for iZotope, which is getting a little bit conceptual perhaps, but it's suggesting that you've already got the assistant on a lot of the software. So as someone that's been using Ozone for a lot of years to master a lot of tracks, it would be kind of cool if over time it listened to and stored information about your mixes ongoing, and then was able to spot patterns or red flags that popped up about possible spots where there are bumps in the spectrum or whatever, and then make suggestions of just to pay attention to those bits, or even what might be causing them in your studio or something like that. Yeah, what do you guys think of that? Possibly it's going too far into AI, and
I think it's a great suggestion, and the honest answer is this artificial intelligence kind of discussion that I think a lot of plugin companies are having right now. We've really just scratched the surface of what this technology can do. It can be implemented in so many different ways to solve so many different problems. We've chosen a few particular problems that we felt we could really deliver value in, but I would say, to the point that you're making about it evolving over time, there's so much room to grow that I would say we've barely scratched the surface of what we can do with the technology, depending on what the problem is.
Yeah, cool. Well, just to get obviously back onto the reverb then. So Michael Carnes, for anyone who doesn't know, he was formerly with Lexicon, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yes, the reverb hardware industry standard that you find in all studios back in the day, and then he moved on to making reverb software. And then what led him to find you guys? Did you find him, or did he?
Yeah, the story goes, it's kind of unfolds over several years, but Michael Carnes and iZotope have had a friendly relationship for quite some time, I would say several years. And Michael Carnes retired recently, and I think he was just thinking about what company would he like to help kind of carry his technology forward. And so this discussion has been brewing for several years, but Michael Carnes landed on iZotope as this is the company that he felt would be able to carry his work forward. So it's been a real great privilege to learn from him and have his expertise, and a privilege to be able to carry the exponential line forward, now kind of interpreted by iZotope. But yeah, it's been a relationship and in the works for many, many years, I would say.
Great. So I reckon we should probably move into the sort of audio portion soon, but let's just see if there are any more questions here. Should I use Nectar masking when mixing vocals with drum loops, or just keep using the masking function with other instruments? I love Nectar. It's from Sir Lancelot, big Nectar fan. Not Neoverb specific, but if you have any comments,
I could definitely say that Nectar masking tech is amazing on masking tech. So if you're getting success using it on sources that are not vocals, I encourage you to continue to do that, because it has done wonders for me personally as well, even on sources that are maybe not the intended one.
Cool. All right. Well, so let's move on to live then, and maybe start to look at the plugin and take a listen to what it can do. So I'll switch this scene now, get me out the way. And yeah, we just got a set here with a ton of stems in, and I'm going to find a particular noise like this chord and play this section here. Just check you guys can hear it okay. Someone give me a thumbs up just to confirm you can hear that, but I think it's coming through. I can see the levels. If it's too loud or too quiet, let me know. I can always turn it up.
I hear it on my end.
You heard it on your end? Okay, good. So let's get Neoverb on the track. Thanks, Josh. So maybe up a smidge. All right. And let's just go to the master then. Turn that up a bit. Wait, that's the cue, isn't it? No, that's all right. Right, so first up, we'll try out a preset. Obviously, there are a ton of great presets here. Let's just maybe try a guitar one. Does seem a little bit quiet, doesn't it? Right, so obviously the thing that change track. The thing that kind of pops out straight away is the blend section in the middle, which I said before kind of reminds me of Logic's ES2 synth. It's ES2, isn't it, with the oscillator blender? And yeah, obviously something that's not been done on a reverb, to my knowledge. And I guess this is something that you guys introduced. Was it your idea, iZotope? That is.
Yes. So we were looking at a way to just create a workflow that allowed you to leverage multiple ambiances, because anyone who's working with multiple reverbs probably knows that to create something that's really spacious and has a lot of depth, you may not be able to get that from one reverb alone, like just a plate. You may need a plate plus something else. And so what we did was identify, well, what are the kind of the three reverbs that we think would best kind of fit together like pieces of a puzzle almost to create overall space and depth that feels very complete and very exciting. So we created this blend pad gesture to basically control three levels, gain basically of these different reverb engines, and allow you to basically audition rapidly which blend of reverbs makes sense for your mix. But you're basically covering the entire mix ambience with one gesture, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So just to sort of explain to people what this is, stop messaging me, guys. Please, I'm going to turn Skype off. So the this triangle here basically has 3 points, and like most triangles, and you've got the early reflections at the top here. You've got the mid reflections here, and then you've got the hall. So this is the middle section of the reverb, and then you got the hall, or like the reverb tail on another edge here, and you can turn them on and off, and blend between them, as you can see. So the thing that struck me again about that is that it's nice to sort of have the kind of control where you can turn off, say, the plate, or the mid section, and just have a blend of the early reflections and the hall, which is quite cool. Just using kind of one vertex there, one axis rather, and yeah, when we were listening to the earliest reflections here, just this first part, if we just like listen to that on its own, for instance. It's the cleanest, kind of subtlest sound. It's very difficult to get a reverb that adds a really kind of subtle, nice amount of space without being too obvious, or without getting just a little bit muddy or whatever. But these early reflections on their own are really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, the thought behind that, one other way to think about this entire triangle for folks that are maybe seeing this for the first time is it's almost like short, medium, long. Short being the early reflections at the very top there, and there was a lot of attention paid to how can we make this as clean as possible and not do anything that kind of blurs the image or creates mud. So there was a lot of kind of fine tuning to make sure we could do this. We could create space, but do it as transparently as possible. That was kind of the name of the game for that early reflection, the top part.
Yeah, and obviously that striving for cleanliness is carried through into other areas like the EQ, which we'll get onto in a bit as well. So it's really nice just to have the option to turn these modules on and off, and then have this really clean early reflections without any of the mid bit, and then just dial in some reverb tail. It's not on, is it? It's like, what's going on? So on its own, with just those two areas, those two kind of reverb stages, it's pretty nice already. But then obviously you've got a third one here, which then allows you to control specifically how much of that you're gonna mix into the reverb. And I was saying before, it's kind of with other reverbs, you're used to sort of maybe being able to use a dry wet control or a size control to back it off into the mix, kind of moving it in one dimension. So with these three options here and this extra axis, it's almost like moving it around in two dimensions rather than one. Is that a kind of fair thing to say?
I love that description. Yeah, Rob, that's a really great way to think about it. In the original design stage, when we were just thinking about this conceptually as a product, we hope that these three reverbs that we've kind of hand chosen, this, when put together, it creates this kind of three-dimensional ambience. One reverb can't do it, but the three of them together can create that three-dimensional aspect. But you have to kind of, like I mentioned, we had to create a gesture that allowed you to kind of navigate what is a very complex reverb world, basically. And it's not just dry or wet, like you said, where actually as you move away, you're potentially, in a way, maybe changing the dimensions of the space that you're working with. You're actually changing the architecture, maybe is a better word, of the reverb itself, which is really powerful, I think, in terms of auditioning and experimentation.
Yeah, so it's just nice to be able to get your fingertips on so many parameters at once, isn't it? Because that's often the problem with reverb. You're just doing these bit by bit, or you find you just go to the decay time or the dry wet or whatever. It's really nice to be able to just morph all these controls together and control, like you said, the dimension and the depth all at once, to get to really tailor it to the kind of sound you're after. So yeah, I'm obviously a big fan of this. Looking forward to checking out a lot more of my mixes. So of course you've got these. Or should we just listen to this? See what people think of these different points here. You've got like we said, the really clean early reflections. You've got the reverb tail with the hull, and then the plate, like the medium reverb there. Got a lovely sound, and of course you can now go in and change the level of these specific ones using the sort of simple controls, and you can turn them on and off from there, as well as select different modes. But if we click here, we get access to these advanced controls, and this has got a number of pretty cool things in it. We were gonna sort of check out, we should maybe check out the tone, because that's a pretty nice section on these. So what was the thinking behind the tone there?
Yeah. For those folks who are using reverb and maybe describing their reverb as bright, dark, airy, this is that section of control within the product itself, where you can actually manipulate the reverb tonality from within the reverb itself without using EQ. So that's another thing that is really powerful about this, is that you can actually shape the tone of the reverb without using any EQ that could potentially affect the natural character of the reverb. So we've got the tone section within the advanced panel that you're showing right here. And another way to access that is actually through the Reverb Assistant, which we may get to in a second, but we've added tone controls, bright, dark, airy. And when you press that, we're actually creating a parameterization for you, but adjusting those advanced parameters. So if you want to get your hands dirty and go in and play with those advanced parameters, you can do that. If you want a shortcut and want to go through the assistant, they'll help you set those up. That's an option as well.
Yeah. So just to turn this up fully wet for a second, if I set it to the hall here, in fact, if I turn the other two off, say the hall was a little bit too bright, then you could dampen that. It's using this, isn't it? So yeah, you've got full control over the brightness of just that section of the reverb without affecting the other two modules. So you could have the early reflections and the medium size nice and bright, but just dampen that lengthy reverb, which is maybe adding a bit too much noisy high frequency into the mix. So yeah, that's awesome. Let's go straight to the Reverb Assistant then. Mm-hmm. So when I click on that, maybe if you're not finding what you want from the presets, or you just want the plugin to actually analyze the audio, this is the area where you can choose what you want based on these different parameters here. So you've got a style slider. I think we should probably go with fairly dramatic here. Let's go with XL. Let's go a bit overboard, and maybe, I don't know, let's try bright or airy. Airy. So yeah, you select the vibe, essentially, select the size, and select the style, whether you want it to be something more lifelike or something sort of shocking, and then hit next, and then it waits for you to receive the audio. And then when it's done, you hit accept, and now it's set up the whole plugin. Has it changed everything, every section, or?
Yeah, the way the assistant is working is it's basically broken into two stages. So that first stage is almost the sound design kind of portion of the reverb, where you're choosing the style, uh, size, the parameters you just set. Then the second part of the assistant, when you hit that next button, that's where we're kind of doing our critical listening of the reverb that's being generated and the dry signal. So we're going to be adjusting the pre-EQ to make sure that any mud resonances, we can control those at the source before they get amplified by the reverb. And then we're also doing an unmasking, kind of taming on the reverb EQ section. So those two together are what's being engaged by the assistant in that second stage.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you guys probably saw the pre-EQ set quite a large curve on there, and all these amount. Well, these longer reverbs here have gone up to much larger amounts now. Let's have a listen. So obviously you can see the early reflections there, a lot more dramatic. We got a bit of pre-delay on there as well. And even the plate reverb's pretty long as well. So yeah, the Reverb Assistant, one way to go there. Really good starting point. Obviously, so this is something we've been used to with iZotope plugins for a while now. So it's a fantastic feature to have. Really helps out beginners, or gives us all interesting starting point. So let's try out a different sound. Let's mute this one. Let's go to, there's a vocal in here somewhere, right? There's a top loop. Yeah, there it is. Top line, rather. Okay, so let's check out this vocal.
Off, because she said she off. Back seat of his Rari with the top off.
Nice, let's get Neoverb on that as well. Let's try the Reverb Assistant on that as well, straight away. Let's go with different on that one. So let's go maybe more realistic. Let's keep it on medium, and let's go dark for that one.
Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home, but I'd rather not. I said I'd rather be alone better than getting caught. You know I broke it off, cause she said she might try and stay again for another night. Coming to an end, tried to keep it light.
Jester just pointed out an interesting question there. There's quite a few questions, actually. Are custom impulse response inputs coming?
That's a great question.
It is.
The honest answer to that is possibly, since we don't know exactly what the next kind of evolution of Neoverb will be. Everything under the hood is an algorithmic reverb that we've inherited from Exponential, but different architectures, different ways to model reverb, that's definitely on the table. So I would say very possible that could be something that we do.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of convolution reverbs. What else we got here? We got, can you say something about unmasking wet dry and Neoverb? Well, I think, yeah, we're going to move on to that in a sec. Should it go on a channel or return track?
So the answer to that is it can do both. And the way that the intelligence is set up in the reverb, whether it's an insert or whether it's on a bus, instrument bus, it will be able to function the same way. So it really depends on what you need it to do. But we did design it with both of those use cases in mind. It should work equally well.
Great. So let's listen to what it's done to this vocal. I actually just moved it from where it was, but...
Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home, but I'd rather not.
Nice. Let's just A-B that.
Backseat of his Rari with. Backseat of his Rari with. Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home, but I'd rather not.
And yeah, and another thing that we should probably point out here is, although lots of parameters are being adjusted here, it's a very smooth sound throughout, which is something I think you guys pay quite a lot of attention to, right? keeping that high quality sound even when tons of parameters are being adjusted. Clicks in plugins obviously are pretty common when you're tweaking parameters, but it sounds really smooth as I'm moving this around.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that was definitely something, we have a quality kind of assurance group within iZotope, and that's one of the things we're always kind of making sure of is that as you're adjusting parameters, there's nothing more distracting than having some strange click, and that could potentially be dangerous to playback systems. So we pay careful attention to making sure there's smooth transitions between any parameters that you're adjusting. But appreciate that because that's something we paid very careful attention to.
Nice. Well, let's move on to the reverb masking then. We've only got about 10 minutes left, so we're cutting it a bit tight. I guess we can spill over a little bit, can't we, past the sort of 45 minutes we're going to do. So with the reverb section, I don't know if I should load up another preset here or just try it out. So if I turn it off, so this is after the Reverb Assistant has done its thing. So I've just closed it to sort of, let's see what happens when we kind of force it to mask. Let's see if it does anything, even though it's applied this pre-EQ. So I guess that's saying, well, you probably don't need to now, but let's try it.
Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home, but
no, so maybe if we choose another preset, like a vocal one.
Backseat of his Rari with the
yeah, so
backseat.
Still got the pre-EQ though. So when you select, so all of these reverbs come with reverb with EQ settings as well. So they've got pre-EQ, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there were some creative aspects to that preset creation. So some of the presets that were developed had EQ settings just as starting points,
yeah.
But they were kind of creative in intention.
Okay, well I'm going to choose one that's sort of fairly flat here deliberately,
Backseat of
and then we'll go to the reverb EQ, and I imagine this time.
Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home.
Okay, it doesn't mind it. Let's try with the longer one. See if will it change? With respect to where the sort of blend control is. If we set it much more over to Hall, will it then go, okay, now you need to apply some masking?
Yeah, there's definitely the way the masking measurement is occurring, definitely some masking is okay. So the goal of the feature was not to kind of, eliminate all masking, but just identify and kind of keep it within a range that made sense. So yes, definitely with size and like blend amount, you may actually kind of enhance that masking occurring. But yeah, the design of that specifically was meant not so much to do maybe like an RX style remove kind of functionality, but more just taper things off. So it may let small amounts of masking through just to, not to cause distraction, I guess, while you're mixing.
Yeah. Okay, let's try again. Let's turn it up really wet as well.
Backseat of his Rari with the top off. He's blowing up your phone, wishing it would stop. She wanted me to take her home, but
doesn't seem to mind it. It's saying no significant masking detected. Is there a ticket? Should we try a bassier sound or something? What's the...
Yeah, that would probably do it. I also realized some of the audio files I sent you were very clean, impeccably recorded. So,
nice.
So it's almost like we have to muddy them up at the source.
Let's try and find something dirty. Do you think drums? What else have we got here? Harmonies, fill, ethnic, crash, trans, chord layer, hooks. I mean, should we try it on the chord again? I mean, I could apply some EQ. We could kind of mess it up a bit with some EQ first.
Yeah, but something that's kind of wider frequency range, I think that could definitely do it as well.
Yeah. Let's just check what else we got then. Let's just see with Live's EQ here, just how that's looking. It's not too widespread. We haven't got many highs. Let's just let's have a look though. So I'll remove the pre-EQ. Yeah, good idea, Josh. It's a good idea. It certainly fattens it up a lot. So now we've got this definitely sort of muddier sounding. I will hit unmask with this one. Yeah. So yeah, as Joshua was just saying there, the pre-EQs when that does all the legwork, the reverb EQ doesn't care so much.
Yeah, that's a very true. It's a great call out. We knew that taking control of masking. We didn't want to rely on one EQ to do it. So that was another reason why there's two stages of EQ, a pre and a reverb EQ. We didn't want to put all the burden on one stage. So if the pre EQ can take care of most of it, then that's great. But we wanted to have both stages just in case there was a need for that.
Yeah. So, once it's picked out any spots where you're going to be getting trouble, you're going to be getting masking, sort of nasty doubling of frequencies, then adds that curve. And then you get an amount here where you can dial in more of it if you like, or back it off a touch. Yeah, I mean, it's a real sort of muddy area of the frequency spectrum, so you can hear it does get a lot more pleasant especially when you crank it up really high there. We should probably move on. We can always, if we've got time at the end, come back to some other sounds. If people have ideas about particular sounds they want to listen to, we could maybe find some stuff in LoopCloud and run it through Neoverb. But for now, let's move on to something that is another really cool feature here, and it's the ability to tempo sync some of these time parameters here, including like pre-delay. So two of the reverb stages, kind of modules here, and also pre-delay. So who thought of that one?
Yeah, that came from kind of observing. Maybe there's even folks who are viewing right now who have done that thing where they pulled out the calculator and they hand calculated the decay time of their reverbs to, using the BPM of the session. We looked at that and we're like, we should just be able to do that math for you. You shouldn't have to pull out a calculator while you're mixing. So that's where maybe the idea came from. And we give you 3 levels of control of that kind of BPM sync capability. So there's the pre-delay, as you mentioned, and you can sync both the reverbs tails for the second and third reverbs, that medium and longer reverb. You can sync those to the decay time to the BPM of the session as well. So a lot of control, and again, that's useful. One, just in terms of creating reverb that kind of works rhythmically in the track and doesn't bleed too much into the groove and takes away from that. But also there's a really, personally from a production standpoint, there's a really cool rhythmic kind of capability by like syncing the pre-delay to different beats. You can get this kind of like rolling reverb rhythm kind of thing. So there's a cleanliness part of it and just a fun production move as well.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll listen to the pre-delay one in a sec. The longer reverbs, just trying to get my head around it a bit. With the delay, obviously, because it's the kind of thing obviously you'd see more in a delay, a beat delay or whatever. How is it? What is it actually doing on these reverbs? Is it sort of quantizing the reflections, sort of bunching them up to the nearest grid position, essentially, or?
We're basically looking at specific time intervals. So in the case of pre-delay, as folks may know, that is the amount of time before which the reverb actually begins to reverberate. So that's the very kind of the early section of that. And so we're just measuring based on your BPM, we can actually make a calculated parameterization of that setting and just make sure that the pre-delay is on beat, just like any other rhythmic element within your track that's quantized. We're aware of that now, and so we're able to manipulate and make sure everything is kind of on the grid if you want it to be.
So I mean, like I said, the pre-delay is a little bit easier to sort of hear and demonstrate, but these ones, I having a play around with them a bit, it's a bit subtler, but like I said, that's probably because it's still a reverb ultimately. You're not actually turning it into a delay. You still have a sort of cloud essentially of reflections and not a single echo like you do with a delay. So
Correct. Yep.
But if you ramp these up really high, which you might not want to do because it gets a bit sort of strange or a little bit wackier in the very high settings, but you can hear at least what it's doing a bit more. But yeah, let's just check out this pre-delay then. So if we sync it now that we're looping a single beat, then I guess if we set it to eighths there, half the beat here, you can hear clearly the reverb just only coming in on this this second eighth note here. And you've also got dotted and triplet times, which is pretty cool. So yeah, just if that's the kind of effect you wanted to have, where the reverb is just only occurring in specific parts of your groove or your track, that is a pretty handy and certainly unique control to have on a reverb. So also looking forward to checking that out in my tracks. So that's some of the main points I was going to go through. Let's see now, and it's also 46 minutes past 8, so kind of up to the final stages. Let's see what people are saying and if there are any other kind of questions. Now we turn to you guys. Great sound of reverb. Also love the midsection from Adrian. Any other questions from you guys about Neoverb while we have Urian with us? We're getting some fans of the pre-delay sync.
That's awesome to hear. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. Josh has got nothing. So I guess all that's left now then is the unless there's anything you want to mention, Odian, before we just go into the competition.
I think, one thing I would love to talk about is the ability to kind of automate that blend control in the main UI. It may not be immediately intuitive to folks who are new to Neoverb, but that little blend control that you have in the main UI or the main window there, you can actually touch automate that. So I find that personally very exciting. So you can imagine if you have a vocal going from verse to chorus, you can actually just gradually change the dimensions of the space, the ambience around it, and then make that transition into like a more expansive, fuller chorus. So it's just a very musical gesture, and it's something that just came out of the development of Neoverb. We were like, oh, wow, this is a really cool kind of artistic production move. So something I encourage folks to try out. Touch automation of that blend pad is really exciting.
Yeah, as we were saying, just the ability to automate that many kind of parameters at once is an excellent thing. Will Neoverb ever get a ducking feature?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's come up a few times. So the short answer is there's no plan for that. And the reason there's no plan for that is we did an internal analysis kind of study of what types of signal processing, what types of controls would help tame the reverb in the mix. So we looked at ducking, we looked at internal side chaining, and we looked at a bunch of other different techniques. And what our sound design team internally at Isotope felt was that the smoothing function that is in Neoverb was doing a very good job of making sure that the reverb was compact and fit right where it needed to be and not overpower, let's say, your lead vocal or snare hit. But the short answer to that question is we don't have plans for ducking because we evaluated it against several different options and we thought it didn't sound as good as what we put in Neoverb. So that's the reason it's not in there. But it was a conscious decision not to do that.
Nice. Does the touch automation work mapped to an XY pad? That's a good question. Can you map this to an XY pad on a controller?
Yeah. So the short answer is not exactly, because what's actually happening when you move Neoverb, that node, when you're moving in that blend pad, you're actually controlling 3 parameters at once. You're controlling the gain, 3 reverb gains. So you can imagine with an XY controller, you're actually controlling 2 parameters. So you wouldn't be able to map all 3 unless you did something slightly strange, like maybe early reflections is your X and then your Y is the other 2 reverbs. Like maybe that could work, but it won't be as smooth and seamless as one would hope, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Well, I think we'll leave it there now for the questions. And yeah, just if you want to win yourself a copy of Neoverb or be in the running for winning one, then we're giving away 1 copy to YouTube viewers, 1 copy to Facebook viewers. All you have to do is slap like now, in the words of Davey504, and comment. And yeah, the guys at Plugin Boutique will pick 2 of you at random and then send you a copy of Neoverb. Yeah, feel free to comment on just how awesome you found this live stream, how scintillating the chat's been, how amazing Neoverb sounded, etc., etc. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us, Odian, and really, really cool to hear more about the plugin and the thinking behind it and how a lot of these features came to be. Yeah, and it's one that I can't wait to start using a lot more in my tracks.
Awesome. Yeah, and thank you so much, Rob, for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak about it. And obviously, it's wonderful hearing from the production community as well, because we really get inspired by hearing the community suggestions and how they're using it. It really helps us do what we do, and we really appreciate it.
Nice one. Yeah, so thank you to all of you who've been watching and commenting and asking questions. And yeah, there'll be a Neoverb course appearing on the Produce Tech website in about 2 weeks. So yeah, feel free to go and check that out as well. So have lovely rest of days and evenings, everyone. And that's it from us.
Great.
See you later,
Thanks
everyone.
so much, everyone.
Cheers, guys.